fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I have a new horror movie review for you. Yes, horror movie review. I still have one Apes film to get to, and I'll still be doing crime and gangster flicks along with random film favorites here and there, and also Batman videos, but it is a horror channel first and foremost. And I think the only reason why I bought this was because I didn't know it was actually out yet, like out. I know it had its limited theatrical release, but I didn't know it was out on DVD and Blu-ray because I went out to get the new Batman Volume 2 collected edition, and I saw they had this, and it is 2021's Wrong Turn. Now, first off, I'm going to call it the 2021 Wrong Turn Reboot, because that's what it is. I see almost every person on the internet is calling it a remake. It's not a remake. And it's even more evident after you watch this, because there's really nothing of the original in it. Clearly, they want to take it in a different direction. I'm not saying that's the definition of a reboot, but it's a reboot. I don't think there's any subjectivity to it. Let people call it what they want. Well, then things wouldn't have definitions for what they are. I do have the first 5 Wrong Turns. I don't have the 6th one. I've seen it. Really didn't care for it. That's definitely more the direction they're going with in this. It was directed by Mike P. Nelson, and it was written by Alan McElroy, who also wrote Halloween 4 and the original Wrong Turn. Stars Charlotte Vega, Matthew Modine, Private Joker from Full Metal Jacket, and also Bill Sage, who I know played Van Patten in American Psycho. He was one of Patrick Bateman's friends. And a bunch of young people. But yeah, Wrong Turn, again, not a remake. Reboot and remake are not as interchangeable as people think they are. I already need to make a video explaining the difference between slasher and giallo. So now reboot and remake, apparently. But I did see the trailer for this, and I didn't remember a thing from the trailer. Nothing stuck with me. I know a lot of comments, people saying generic. It's the internet. I think people are going to call anything generic. I bet even The Lighthouse got comments saying that it was generic. But I will admit, I was a little excited when I saw this at the store and I picked it up. Because back when the series was still coming out around 4, 5, and 6, I used to get excited. As bad as they are, I like the first Wrong Turn quite a bit. Yeah, it's kind of a rip-off, I guess, or a take on Hills Have Eyes before the remake came out. That's a remake. Wrong Turn 2 is a fun enough sequel. It's well made enough. 3, I think, is the worst of the bunch. 4 and 5 are both really dumb, unneeded prequels, but I have fun with them. Very cheap, but I can kind of laugh at them. Kind of like a Batman and Robin, kind of bad. 6, I don't remember a thing from. It does not stick in my head. I remember it being very, very, very different than the other films. As with this, they literally could have called this anything else, and it would have worked. They could have called this Foundation or The Foundation, and it would have worked. There was that film from 2011 that I keep forgetting the name of that I saw. The people in the woods, they had the mask with the thorns, they hammer it on people. Then the twist at the end is, everything's flipped. It's actually more of a reboot of that movie than Wrong Turn. But you have a group of friends. They're going to go hike on the Appalachian Trail. starting in Virginia, not West Virginia, like the older series, in which I guess in some areas this is called Wrong Turn 7, The Foundation, which instead of making it a reboot, they could have just continued it, called it Wrong Turn 7, The Foundation, because it already is more of a sequel to 6 than anything else, or prequel to 6 than anything else. So they could have just had sort of that diversion with part 6, because 6 still has the mutants in it, but they're used very much in the background. I'll just say right up front, there's no mutants in this. None. You get one small scene of cannibalism way towards the end. That's basically it. It's like it's like if there's going to be another reboot of like Hills Have Eyes, and then you put it in, and then it ends up being more like Shyamalan's The Village. And I don't mean that as in it came out shitty. I mean because it's this whole hidden community with their values and everything. And this is a really bad cover. I mean, this doesn't even look like Wrong Turn. I don't know if you can make that out well, but I think it looks blurry. I think it's supposed to be like a cave painting or like leather painting. The cover I'm using for the thumbnail looks way better than this. It actually makes it look more interesting. But anyway, they go hiking on the Appalachian Trail, even though they get the generic, like stay out of the woods, stick to the trail. See, there I said generic. Which actually, the most generic thing about this movie, honestly, is the opening scene. Because we have the girl Jen, played by Charlotte Vega. Her father is Matthew Modine, Private Joker. Modine gets to this town in Virginia. He's got Jen's picture, showing it around. Have you seen my daughter? Have you seen my daughter? Ends up at this bar, starts talking to this one guy. He's like, yeah, I seen him. They gone up in the woods. People go up there, they don't come back. Gets in his car to leave, and then 6 weeks earlier, it did that bullshit. It pulled the Blumhouse false start. That's the most generic thing about this movie, I will admit, is that false start, starting us like at the end, and then going backwards and working forward. But you do get like a progressive cast of characters. I mean, you got the interracial couple, you have the gay couple, you have the, I guess, straight white couple. But, I mean, that does come into play because when they end up at that bar, people kind of start getting tense. And the one white guy who was played by, I think it was Dylan McTee, who played Adam. He's pretty much a cross between an Adam Scott character and a Ty Burrell character from Modern Family. Just take characters they're known for, mash them together, you get this guy. And he makes jokes about like, we got two gay guys here. Hey, black guy, white girlfriend here in bumfuck Virginia. But anyway, they start going down the trail. And the first half of this movie goes by very fast. I will say that. Like, I did not know that this movie was an hour 50 minutes. I didn't know this was that close to 2 hours. So it's coming up on like the hour 30 mark. And I'm just like, okay, is that how it ends? Then it keeps going. And I'm like, all right, so it's got to end here. Then it keeps going. Well, basically it starts out, and of course they divert from the trail because the lead guy, Dane Bradley, I think, is Jen's boyfriend. Oh, which also when they're at the bar, I think we get like the progressive FU to the. Because the old guy is like, you goddamn hipster kids, or what's wrong with this country? You'll never know what it's like to have a real job. And then, of course, Jen speaks up and is like, they have a degree in this. She's a med student. He's, they're anthropology. I have degrees in art, literature, and dance, which means I make coffee for a living. Which that was a nice touch. Give the person with all the arts degrees, putting them in a coffee shop. And then they kind of mock that guy by saying, I see yellow in your eyes. Is that failed liver? Is that hepatitis? And then he kind of walks off. So there. Hipsters got to one-up the guy. So, enjoy that. But Dane Bradley plays Darius, Jen's boyfriend. He wants to walk off the trail, like along the cliff, for whatever reason. And they end up on this hill where all of a sudden this giant log. Well, first, Jen sees someone. And I will say there are some shots in here that are genuinely creepy. Like off in the distance, you kind of get like an image of someone like peeking behind a tree. They're like going back in behind it. Looking like Wrong Turn mutants, but it's a fake out. All of a sudden, this giant tree just comes barreling down the hill at them. CGI, of course. And I will say, while the writing is some of the sloppiest part of this film, the editing is actually well done at times. Like, when they're running away from this tree, one by one, they start to trip and fall and tumble. And every time they kind of tumble and hit themselves or hit a branch or a tree, it's like this quick cut of editing with like the snapping sound of bones or branches. So it's almost like this Requiem for a Dream kind of editing of every time they tumble or hit something. I thought that was neat. And there's more impactful violence in this. Like, one of the boyfriends, one of the gay boyfriends, he lands up against a tree and he just sees it coming at him. And we see, like, tree up close of his face screaming. And then we just get, like, a shot of a tree with the birds flying off it. To sort of, but you kind of feel the, like, as soon as it hits. So, stylized very well. Of course, we see what he looks like after, all mangled up and shit. And then they keep walking. They get lost. His boyfriend wants to take his body, but they tell him they can't. The one asshole guy says we should just set up camp tonight. So they do. Jen wakes up in the middle of the night, sees the silhouette on the tent of someone. They wake up the next morning. That asshole's girlfriend, Mila, played by Emma Dumont, which she didn't look familiar, but that name sounds familiar. Nothing. She's gone. They don't know where she went. Their phones are gone. So then they're walking around, and all of a sudden there's like this snag trap with the chain. Grabs around the guy's ankle, the jerk's ankle, and starts pulling him, and pulling him, and pulling him, and all of a sudden he goes down this hole, this cave. So then they keep walking. Eventually, they find... They're picked off one by one. So it's the one boyfriend that's left, the lead couple. They see these, like, cloaked in, like, moss and grass with, like, the animal skull on their head, kind of like what you'll see on the cover. And they got the guy that got dragged down the hole hogtied with the sack over his head. So the Darius guy grabs a knife, threatens them, saying, like, drop him, let him go. They're speaking in some other language, but you don't see what they look like. The other guy ends up untying himself, grabbing a log, beats one to death, beats up the other one. Because he's like, where's my girlfriend? Where'd you take her? Beating him. And then the girl just shows right up. And she says, like, I woke up to go pee, and then I saw these skull-wearing guys. You guys were gone. Well, did you hear us calling you? Yeah, but I couldn't call back. And character motivations are all over the place. Because when it came to the guy that got crushed by the tree, everyone was like, no, we can't take him. He's dead. It's just their body. We have to keep moving. We have to keep moving. So now that these enemies, unknown enemies, are dead, they all agree, we got to get out of here. This is messed up. Well, Jen is the first one to say, so you killed them for no reason? And then the jerk guy was just like, they grabbed me by a chain and dragged me down a hole. I was just tied to a thing. They were going to take me to do God knows what else. We thought they took her, but they didn't. And then she was like, well, what do we do about the bodies? Like, now she want, like, character motivations are flip-flopping a lot. But, and very quickly, it becomes not really a wrong turn movie. They're all running away. The girl that, the guy's girlfriend, the jerk guy's really hipster-looking girlfriend, she falls through a trap hole that's got the sticks. It goes right through her. He makes the decision to just run, which this was a creepy scene as well. While they're all trying to decide what to do, they see, like, parts of the ground moving. You see people rising out of the ground because they had, like, real ground camouflage, like just sticks and moss and bones. So they all start running. Girl falls in the hole. Stick. Boyfriend runs off. And I know people will say that a lot of the kills are off screen. That is true. But I thought this one had the suspense to it. Because the camera is, like, down low. Like, kind of by her, looking up. And just right along the edge of the hole, you just kind of see this skull-masked figure walk into view. Just pull out his bow and arrow. Like, the anticipation was there. Like, and the camera stays on him while he, instead of actually showing her. But eventually, the other four get caught. The lead couple, the jerk guy, and then the guy whose boyfriend was killed by the tree. And they're brought into this gated community, which was hinted towards because that night they made camp, when they woke up, they saw there was small footstones everywhere. There was, like, this sort of like an old mausoleum that had the plaque that said the foundation, the 12 families that fled into the mountains right before the Civil War to instill their life. So that's where they ended up. They're now being taken to the actual village of the Foundation. And where the leader, played by Bill Sage, goes by Ramskull or Venable, which, so like the original series when you had One Eye, Three Finger, Sawtooth, There's like ram skull, deer skull, or wolf head, stuff like that. Wild boar skull, wolf skull, ram skull. That's what they go by. And they have this whole language that they've made up, I'm guessing. But they hold this trial for who killed one of the members during the confrontation. And the only one they allow to speak is Jen. But we see the young woman that's sort of doing the translating, I guess, is this young woman we saw in the beginning of the film when Jen buys these bracelets off someone selling them out of a tailgate on the side of the road with a young girl standing there named Ruthie. Because we gotta have the young creepy girl in there. So they have this trial. They all try pleading and getting out of it. It doesn't work. They keep threatening, like, the next one to talk at a turn. Loses their tongue. Jen lies, saying the guy didn't kill the guy. But then the dead guy's brother comes in and says, we were out hunting. He hit me, then killed my brother. Called the young girl up. She pointed out the same guy. So they sentence him to death. They punish the other three for lying to darkness. Which the guy's death sentence is they bring him into this other room. And he says, the ram skull asks, how was he killed? Jen says, struck in the head. He picks up a bloody piece of wood like this. They're kind of like, yep. He bludgeons him, which the first blow we don't see, but then after he's all pulpy, we kind of see him smashing it. There is some CGI, but when it's practical, there's not a whole lot there. It's not a big gore fest like the original films. I know that the producers, the writer, and the director, they said they didn't want to go for a slasher film. They had already done that. Which, okay, they want to do something different. They want to go for more allegorical. They want to go more philosophical. They want to go more the kind of movie that's like, who's the real monsters? Is it the ones that live in civilization? Is it the ones where, where we have prejudice and war and whatnot? And here, where everyone is the same. White, black, gay, straight, anything you contribute to the foundation makes you an equal member of everyone. Who's the real monster? And the way it plays out was the guy at the trial that said, yeah, he hit me, that killed my brother, saying we were out hunting, we caught something in our chain trap, we went to go check it, it was this guy. We were going to try to carry him to like the outskirts of our area, but then we were ambushed, attacked, and killed. So it tries to do that Elm Street remake twist where it's like they were the innocent ones. So then they sentence the other three to darkness, which is there's this black cell. The guy whose boyfriend was killed, because I don't remember like anyone's names. They get a hot piece of metal, they burn his eyeballs out with it, throw him in the dark cell. And then Jen has this genius idea because she hears someone saying, like, here everyone is equal. We don't judge by skin color or whatever, we judge by skills and contribution. Which the first time we see Jen and Darius is saying how he wishes he could just move away and start a community where people aren't judged on bank accounts and skin color, but skills and contributions. So this is where she speaks up and says, don't kill us, let us in. Like, let us join you. Because her whole character thing is she has to make this big choice in life. Does she stay at the coffee shop with her arts degrees that are not going to get her anywhere in life? Or can she go join her father's business? And she hadn't given an answer yet. So it's like, okay, I can stay here. He can also have his life where everyone's an equal, but he's also very strong. So and then she also says, I have no sickness in my family. I'll make very healthy babies to anyone that needs a wife. Of course, Ramskull needs a wife. He allows both of them to stay. That's kind of where I thought the film was going to end. But it's at that time we catch back up to the beginning of the film 6 weeks later with a Matthew Modine, who even his wife says don't worry about her because it's the stepmother. She's like, forget about her. Worry about my boys, our boys. But he goes anyway, and of course he encounters the same guys at the bar. He encounters the woman at the bed and breakfast that they stayed at that said stick to the trail. She comes in and gives him the exposition of the Foundation, who, the 12 families that fled into the mountains at the brink of the Civil War. In preparation for the collapse of America, they could create the new America, and they're still there. People have gone missing ever since. Anyone who goes up there never comes back. So he goes out and buys a bunch of camping gear. The redneck guys kick his ass for continuing to look for his daughter. Okay. Then the next day, he's packing stuff into his car. Bed and breakfast lady says, I have an idea. She hooks him up with this one hunter guy who for $5,000 will take him into the woods with him, with his son, because he's got a bunch of guns. He knows the mountains very well. He's got like an arrow cut as like a warning because he once went up there. His nephew or someone got killed up there. And they don't make it very far. They find one trap that they kind of cut. It goes off and they're able to avoid it. He's like, there's 2 sets of traps. Up there at the second set is where I got this one. And then Modine asks what happens if one passed the second set. He's like, then they don't let him go. But then the next trap is the guy's son or whatever falls in a hole. They're trying to pull him out. There's tripwire all around them. The guy sets it off with his foot. And it's like this big, like live edge part of a tree, like a tree stump with spikes at the bottom that falls, crushes him, except for Modine, who grabs the guy's 6-shooter. Makes his way up to the Foundation, who now Darius and Jen are now completely Foundation reformed. Jen even shoots him with an arrow. It seems like doesn't recognize him. Ramskull says trespasser doesn't need a trial. He sentenced to death at dawn. But then Jen decides to sneak him out. They can't get through the gate, so they got to go like through the cell of the darkness, the ones that were sentenced to darkness. This was a creepy scene. This is really the only wrong turn, cannibalistic mutant bit that you'll see. They start going through, and it's like this pitch black cavern. They got like horn torches. And there's all these people who are like emaciated, They just got empty eye sockets, and they're just... Which, the one guy that said, yeah, he killed my brother, he, like, caught them. He caught her trying to sneak her dad out, but then she shot him. So then some people started coming out of the cell to eat him. But they're walking through the cave. Then she sees her friend that was thrown in there, shoots him out of his misery. They get out. There's like a trench. But they're able to get out. They're running through the woods. The rednecks from the bar are there. And the reasoning was kind of silly. Because the guy is like, hey, we tried to help you. That's why we kicked your ass so that you would, decide to come up here or whatever. Then he looks at her and he was like, hey, lady, you helped me too. That yellow in my eyes was my liver failing me. And it wasn't used for comedy. It was just like, okay. And some of the Foundation has already made it to them, and they're throwing their knives at some of the guys they brought, but they got, assault rifles. But eventually, like, 2 of the guys from town, and then Jen and her dad, they make it out. They make it to the truck. The one guy grabs a jar of moonshine with a rag, a Molotov, throws it. The Ram Skull lifts his thing, and it says, we see that it was her husband, the leader. So then I thought, and then we get like the slow music of them relaxing in the back of the truck. They made it away. I thought, okay, there's the ending. No, we get a little epilogue. And I'm like, is this going to be a dream? Is this like a fake out? She's now working for her dad. She goes home where her stepmother and stepbrothers are, or half-brothers are. And there's the new neighbors, John and Ruthie. Yes. Ramskull and Ruthie. Wearing, all clean, new clothes. Weird accents. Saying they're moving down the street. Saying, oh, we know who... he knows who your father is. And that he knows you too. And that's when he says, they get offered to stay for dinner, and he looks at Jen as like, you're feeding for 2 now. Congratulations. So we get the idea she's pregnant. And then there's just this sequence where Ramskull, or John, takes like a knife out, stabs the stepmother, slits the throats of the 2 brothers. She does some crazy move to get behind him and stab him in the back of the head. Then we find out that was all a dream. But they're both still at the table. They are there. And then they start going through the scene again. Like, I knew I'd find you, or you're stronger than I thought. I had to be to get away from you. But then which actually, before it cuts back to real life, this was another really creepy moment. The stepmother who's been stabbed is on the floor, like, with her eyes rolling back, and she's talking normal, like, Jen, have you? Just the way she's kind of twitching and her eyes are rolling back, but talking normally, it does look kind of chilling. But Jen is like, if you promise never to harm anyone in my family, I'll go back with you. He promises. They get in the RV. We see the RV kind of go like this. Hits a neighbor's car. Some guy comes out. She jumps on top of him and stabs him. Runs over, stabs the other guy a bunch of times. Ruthie walks up, puts her hand on her shoulder. She stands up. And they just walk hand in hand down the middle of this suburban road. I don't know if this is a rant or what. I mean, this literally could have been called anything else. They could have just called this The Foundation. Although, I do understand that the writer of the original and the producers wanted to go in a different direction. Okay, we've already done the slasher film. Let's go a bit more philosophical. Let's show who are the real monsters, civilization or non-civilization. But when it's a big slasher, well, I can't really say big slasher franchise because it's not like Friday the 13th or Halloween or Elm Street. But, you know, and they knew the risk that they were taking, not having mutant cannibals in here. There's one little nod, where after everything's said and done, and it shows that, you know, they did make it out. She is working for her dad. She's in the car. He's standing at the window, and she says, "It's pizza movie night tonight. Don't forget." He's like, "Oh yeah, never forget." She's like, "There's one about inbred cannibals," and he's like, "Again?" So, okay. Kind of a cute joke. I mean, it would have been like a little, "Oh, fuck you, that's all you're giving us," if she had just said that. But when he was just like, "Again?" It kind of made it a little clever. I mean, it has the aesthetic of a Wrong Turn movie. And it goes that direction for like the first half. But then it just keeps going and going. It's like a completely different movie. Once we got into the compound and the foundation, I was like, where is this going? I have no idea. I kept thinking like when he sentenced the one guy to darkness, I was like, are the mutants in there? Are they going to come out? But yeah, no mutant cannibals, no inbred hillbillies in this film whatsoever. And that's where I'm torn because a lot of times it does depend on whether it's good or not. If it's too much like the original or too different. Here, it had enough more or less original ideas. Enough to where it could have been its own movie. I would have much rather seen that. I'm really stumped on this. I mean, the production looked decent. I'm not sure what the budget was. It made less than $400,000 at the box office. Granted, it had, well, I think it was like a one-night showing, but I do understand that people that saw this and did not like it were probably like myself. They went into it wanting to see what new they could do with inbred cannibals. Inbred hillbilly cannibals. And they went in a completely opposite direction. But at the same time, they already somewhat halfway tried this with part 6. Didn't really work. So they should have either called this something else. Called this just The Foundation. Make it its own movie. Or call it Wrong Turn 7, The Foundation. And kind of build off of it that way. Because 6 already had this sort of culty feel to it. What little I do remember. Like, it wasn't so much about the cannibal brothers in part 6 as it was this bigger cult following. So, and I think that's what most people are going to have problems with. I will say the production value, it looked nice. It didn't look or feel very generic. Actors weren't all the best. The characters, it kind of felt like, let's just make them, like, face value. Let's just make them all progressive in some way, diverse, and there's our characters. But the characters, the way they were written, and just the writing in general, is kind of sloppy and uneven. The editing was impressive at some time. Like, when they're all tumbling away from the tree that's barreling down. The way they edited all the different hits. I thought that was nice. But, and then just halfway through, it just got kind of, not really confusing or convoluted, but just like, why is it going in this direction? I really don't know how I feel about this movie. This is something I might have to watch again and really try to digest it. And it's not because it's hard to follow or it's very deep and philosophical. It's not that. It's just, as a wrong turn movie, I would say, yeah, it's not wrong turn at all. But as a standalone film, like if this was just called, Foundation, just think of it as The Foundation. It was kind of decent, passable. So, I don't know if this is a rant or what. I know people are going to say in the comments, like, that's the most generic piece of shit remake. It's not a remake. It is a reboot. And to be honest, it's not generic. It doesn't look generic. It doesn't, it kind of does its own thing, really. And it already looks, like, I saw one comment on someone's review. It looks so generic. I thought this came out in 2012. Like, really? 2012 films were pretty generic looking. This does have decent production value. I will give it that. The trailer for this alone was better than most Blumhouse films, whole films. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this besides the fact it got me. I'm stumped. There were a few genuinely creepy images. Like, when they had the distant images that weren't jump scares, that's another thing. Its scares were all atmospheric, not jump scares. So I give it all the props in the world for that. But, at the same time, if I'm going to buy a wrong or watch a wrong turn movie, I would like it to be inbred hillbilly cannibals. But, if it's a reboot, technically reboots can go in any direction they want. It's in the it's along the Appalachian Trail, so they do make a wrong turn. It's a reboot, so all's fair in reboots. It just depends on if it's good or not. And as a standalone film or a reboot, I would say it's halfway decent. I was mostly entertained. But yeah, that's all I got for this. Wrong Turn Reboot, not remake. Wrong Turn Reboot 2021. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for watching.